Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to meet you all for the SAARC Special Lecture Series 2024. This is Dr. Beena Gandhi Devi, Deputy Director Research, SAARC Cultural Center. The SAARC Special Lecture Series was started with the aim of bringing professionals and experts from various backgrounds to share their insights on how to promote cultural diversity through different mediums and creative, inclusive environments. So, in this series, we have with us Mr. Yeshi Samdrup from Bhutan. Before we start with his lecture, we are honored to have with us the Director of SAARC Cultural Center, Ms. Renu Kekanaike, to deliver the welcome address. So, over to you, madam.
Good afternoon, Mr. Yeshi Samdrup, dear guest. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all of you. It is indeed a great pleasure and honor for me to welcome you to this special lecture on a topic of immense cultural and architectural significance, vernacular houses of Bhutan, a heritage of the people. We are especially privileged to have with us today Mr. Yeshi Samdrup, the Chief of Heritage Sites and Archaeology Division, Department of Culture, Bhutan. He is an expert in the field of cultural heritage and architecture, and we are grateful to him for taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us and share his valuable knowledge. Thank you for your contribution to this enriching and important discourse. The theme of today's lecture, the vernacular houses of Bhutan, is a remarkable reflection of the cultural wisdom, resilience, and traditions of the people of Bhutan. They embody centuries of sustainable architectural practices, use of local materials, and cultural values that have been passed down from generation to generation. In a rapidly modernizing world, such heritage is of immense importance, reminding us of our roots and the wisdom of our ancestors. The significance of this topic extends far beyond the borders of Bhutan. The entire SAARC region shares a rich tapestry of cultural heritage, and the vernacular architecture forms a critical part of this shared legacy. In countries across South Asia, from the majestic mountains of the Himalayas to the plains of Sri Lanka, vernacular architecture reflects a deep understanding of climate, geography, and community life. By learning from the vernacular houses of Bhutan, we gain insights that resonate across our region, insights into sustainable living, preservation of heritage, and the role of architecture in shaping our cultural identities. As we come together in this spirit of collaboration and shared learning, it is vital that we continue to explore, preserve, and celebrate the diverse cultural traditions that make our region so unique. Today's lecture is a step in that direction, contributing not only to our understanding of Bhutanese heritage but to the broader goal of cultural preservation throughout the SAARC country. I would also like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you who have joined us today. Without the enthusiasm and participation of such an engaged audience, events like this would not have the same impact. Once again, I express my deep gratitude to Mr. Yeshi Samdrup for being here with us and for sharing his vast expertise on these important subjects. We look forward to an enlightening and throughout-provoking session. Thank you, and I wish you all a meaningful and enriching experience during today's special lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Now, moving on, this afternoon we have with us Mr. Yeshi Samdrup. Mr. Yeshi is the Chief Architect at the Heritage Sites and Archaeology of Department of Culture and Dzongkha Development since 2012. He holds a bachelor's degree in architecture from Maulana Azad National Institute of Technology, India, and a master's degree in urban engineering from the University of Tokyo, Japan. His expertise is mainly on incorporating the cultural landscape approach in Bhutanese planning, where he has been instrumental in advancing and institutionalizing the concept. He also played a key role in drafting Bhutan's first legislative framework for the protection and promotion of cultural heritage. His interests include the documentation of heritage sites, focusing on their chronological evolution. Mr. Yeshi also contributed to groundbreaking research on traditional Bhutanese houses conducted in partnership with the Tokyo National Research Institute for Cultural Properties. In addition to his professional work, he's also very much engaged in, very much engaging in youth in the field of cultural heritage and promoting heritage conservation in the private sector. So this afternoon we have Mr. Yeshi Samdrup with us, who is going to speak on the vernacular houses of Bhutan. Over to you, Mr. Samdrup.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bina, for introduction. So I'll share my screen. Good afternoon to you all. Madam Renuka Ikanaki, Director, Cultural Center, Dr. Bina Gandhi Deori, Deputy Director of Research, officials of SCC, and most importantly, good afternoon and thank you all to the participants who are joining virtually for this small session on vernacular houses of Bhutan. So I'm started by the introduction of Madam Director and Dr. Bina on, and I'm a little bit skeptical whether I would be able to justify up to your words, but nonetheless, the topic that I'm going to talk today is on vernacular houses of Bhutan, and I have been working in this field of research on vernacular houses for more than a decade now. So I feel that if I share a little bit of what I've learned through, so it would be more engaging and informative, so that at the end we have a collective approach as a global citizen towards protection of our cultural heritage. So the topic that I have today is on vernacular houses of Bhutan, and the focus is on heritage of the people. So we understand that cultural heritage, varied diversity, and there are so many elements of cultural heritage. But I think one of the most indispensable and crucial and important aspect of cultural heritage is vernacular houses, and this through this understanding on vernacular houses as a heritage, we understand people over a passage of time, how we have changed social aspect, economic aspect, cultural aspect, and also I would like to emphasize here that my presentation might be a little bit technical, but I'll try to bring it in sync with general public. So mostly from an architectural heritage aspect, the presentation is being prepared. So with this, let me go to the table of content. So I'll be highlighting firstly on overview of what heritage and architecture, traditional architecture, vernacular architecture is in Bhutan. So I'll focus on that. And second, I'll go in depth into architectural heritage in Bhutan, and then down to the topic of today's session, vernacular houses. Um, since I'll be presenting an brief of the over a decade research work between Department of Culture and Dzongkha Development and Tokyo National Research Institute for Cultural Properties. So I'll focus on what we have done, a summary of the research work, and what were the findings from the research work, and analysis part. And then in line with that, how we integrate this research into a policy framework whereby we do protect vernacular houses, promote construction of new vernacular houses, traditional houses, and then at the end approach on the conservation that we are embarking on based on the research work. How are we conserving our vernacular houses? So overall, I would like to go very light in my presentation, and as per the schedule, I'll take the questions at the end of the presentation. So I'm hoping that I'll get many questions from all of you. So when we go to when we understand vernacular houses and heritage, built heritage in specific, we tend to look into the lands from the architecture point of view. So we always ask, what is architecture? And there I have here the definition from Merriam-Webster dictionary. Akin to that definition at the local, regional, national, and global context. Now, if you look into Bhutanese context, what is Bhutanese architecture? So, if I have to summarize in a line, it is an idea and expression. It is our identity and our cultural heritage. So, while we have evolved over the time, introduced modern construction and all, but specifically for Bhutan, we have very close relationship with architecture. Our modern buildings have to align to traditional architectural expression. So just we can explain it from the identity point of view, from cultural heritage point of view, and then and the creation architecture is more than a building. It's more contextual, tangible, and intangible heritage, and at the end contributes to the identity of a nation, of a place. So with this, when we talk on architecture, what influences? I think it's similar to all across the world, but specifically in Bhutanese context, because of the geographical formation of the natural setting, topography, and environment, has to do more to architecture. We are, as Dr. Bina highlighted, the Himalayan, close to a Himalayan range, so big mountains, valleys, rivers. So this topography and natural setting has lots to do the land use pattern that is based on the formation of geographical formation of land. Bhutanese traditional architecture is also influenced by indigenous materials, the choice of materials, very natural. We look at stone, rammed earth, timber. And we specifically talk of architectural techniques, nailless construction, the joinery, in-depth joinery, detailing. It's all indigenous materials. And from the functional aspect, from the intangible aspect, we have religion also influencing our architecture. The primarily as a Buddhist nation, the traditions linked to Buddhism and influence from Buddhism has also lots to do how architecture is being shaped. From the temples to the vernacular houses, with that varied range of architectural elements, the influences I think are similar in Bhutanese context. As I've mentioned earlier on the traditional houses, vernacular houses being influenced with the topographies. Some case example I've shown here. The first one is from central part of Bhutan, Nabji, whereby the alluvial formation of the land at the fertile land used as a paddy field, and at the top we have the settlement clustered, and here we can see these scattered terraces with small pockets of village across. So these are all this determines the cultural landscape of Bhutan. So we have the agricultural land use, geological and geographical context which embodies the values of sustainability and harmony with nature. So I would like to highlight here that when we work for the first legislative framework for the country for cultural heritage, we our primary focus was on cultural landscape. So how can we sustain cultural landscape of the country in the changing times? While we need to do economic development, infrastructure development, but the essence which is in the expression of the cultural landscape, how we protect and preserve that. With this in the cultural heritage bill that we worked, we have a provision in the preamble stating that Bhutan as a whole is recognized as unique cultural landscape. It doesn't mean that Bhutan as a whole is designated or registered or identified or protected as cultural landscape, but the elements within it, the agriculture fields, the traditional vernacular houses, the monuments and all, which are being valued in the planning process for in pursuit of infrastructural and economic advancement. So which these are not considered as hindrances, but rather than a strength to incorporate in planning. So this is one of the unique approach that we have adopted. When we talk about architecture, we not only talk about what is the result that we can see, what is the tangible element that we can see, but to make that we have many intangible elements. So they're intricately interwoven, the tangible and intangible aspect. So the when we talk about where was I? Architecture, intangible aspect, the techniques. From the carpentry, masonry, from carving, also on the belief system that the inherent owner of the land, the deities, and also how we appease and how we harmonize. That we don't own that single plot of land, but we need to get the permission from this. So all these intangible practices also shape what architecture really is, the ritual and the practices and tradition. So when we talk about tangible architecture in Bhutan, we have the monumental fortresses we call zones, and we have temples. Then we have stupas and the vernacular houses, dwellings and farmhouses. Also the palaces and the settlement, cultural site and archaeological site. So coming to the topic of the day on vernacular houses of Bhutan, in the national language, we call it Ichim, I meaning village and Chim meaning house. So if we translate vernacular house to Bhutanese language Dzongkha, we call it Ichim. So they are located in the rural settlements within the cluster or scattered, but surrounded by agricultural fields. And not only that they serve as a residential unit, but they are the social, economic, and religious unit itself. So for the basic understanding, we have this typical old vernacular houses. We have the surrounding wall enclosing the structure, the ground floor usually used for in the ancient time usually used to keep the livestock, cattle, and in the middle floor usually used for the storage, and the topmost floor, upper floor, we call it tento, which are used for living purpose, and then we have the attic space above, which used for storage purpose. For drying haze, making haze, and winter storage, and all kept just below the roof space. So if you go inside the houses, the altar space is the most important part of the house. Then, as I mentioned, in the lower floor, is as cattle sheet. You can see some photographs here. In the upper floor, in the attic space, we have the drying space and storage, and the living area. It's very simple, just for a functional purpose. Functions within the vernacular houses. So the now coming to the research point, we have I would like to present on how our research has came about, and we know that the earthquake of 2009, and we had an earthquake in 2011. Kind of had a perception that the vernacular houses are not safe enough to dwell in, and there was a risk of losing all our vernacular houses. But then that's where the requisite of carrying out a research, a national level research, the objective to determine how safe our vernacular houses are in as in one objective, and another one is how can we define our vernacular houses as an integral part of our cultural heritage. So the registration of vernacular houses carried out from 2000 was carried out in 2016, and then prior to that, the Tokyo National Research Institute for Cultural Properties and my department, our department here, started to collaborate to carry out the research. And then we had the research on typology and chronology of vernacular rammed earth houses being carried out. So just to highlight here some pictorial graphics on the unfortunate incidents of earthquake, where many of the heritage sites succumb to this disaster. So with this, the approach was to have an architectural study and structural study combined together. We kind of determine from architectural studies, it was more so into aligning into how vernacular houses qualifies, or to determine its presence and in within the paradigm of the cultural heritage. And structural study focused on the safety aspects, so value and safety aspects. So both through these two approach, we work towards that. And we worked on the roadmap, preparation of roadmap, and what are the milestones that we need to achieve, and the end product is how can we preserve and promote vernacular houses. And also with the intervention, currently modern intervention, how can we make it more resilient, build back better concept of approach to be adopted. So in the western region, we have Punakha, Wangi, Thimphu, Chukha, and Haparo district covered, and more than 100 houses we researched, and out of which I think around 41 houses we had a publication worked out, in-depth analysis research being carried out. So the methodology adopted to firstly to identify which are the potential houses that we need to document, and then do research on, and then with this identification, then in-depth second stage in-depth survey, going into understanding the architectural documentation, measured drawings. We do the survey of the traces, how chronology the houses kind of change over the period of time. Also carried out interview for both our traditional craftsmen and also the owners and custodians of these houses, so that their input is also integrated within the research work, and of course photographic documentation. So I'll just quickly highlight onto it, and we did an in-depth study on the building patterns on traditional rammed earth houses. So primarily, we kind of segregate and categorize into 5 typology. So you can see here the ground floor, first floor, we call it first floor, ground floor plan, and then the first floor plan. So this is an schematic plan layout of vernacular houses in the country. Some examples here in type E, we have the example from Thimphu. So the most important crucial aspect is through this architectural, typological, and chronological study, we kind of determined the end result is which typology is all this, what are the techniques adopted, how the techniques has changed over the time. So the research was focused into that, and then how do we qualify them, as cultural heritage. So this type A is found out to be the oldest typology, dating back to 17 before 17th century, 17th 18th century. So in this, the material and the structural characteristics, the thickness of the wall, how the rammed up the wall construction is being carried out, all detailed in-depth studies were carried out. And then in typology B, we have an internal intermediate wall. And so advancing more into the is from a simple one-room layout to now basically advancing into a two-room layout of the plan. And then we have similar to the type B, we have this type B, and in the front side you can see these timber openings windows, which we call as a rafsel, which kind of defines the outlook and characteristic. But earlier we don't see this kind of rafsel. This is also a different typology where there is front side window opening rafsel, but with a similar one room approach within one room layout in the structure. And then this is another typology of houses that we studied. So I'll not go in depth into each typology, but as I've already highlighted, was one of the most important, since some of the participants might be interested in conservation architecture. We need to understand the layout, even from the dimension of the space, dimension of the wall, the technique, the tapering of the wall techniques, the dimension of the one block, and within that how many layers are there. So if we study in depth and do comparison, then we can segregate it, and then we can have a call on how it has changed over the period of time. And this change is also is very important for us to understand in the field of heritage conservation. This type E, we have in the ground floor or all enclosed wall, and then in the first floor we have the timber openings, as I've mentioned earlier. So we were able to determine how the rammed out houses change over the period of time. So here we can see the initial so here is all this typology, one room typology with some timber openings to within, and then here we have the structure with the timber opening independent. So the difference between these two is we have this wall continuing up, but here from the ground floor the wall discontinues. The timber wall takes in place. So this chronology we studied, and apart from that, when we do study of structure, any heritage, there are traditional methods of reinforcement, construction methods, specification, the quality of soil, the color of the soil is also very important for us to determine the cultural heritage value, chronology, and typology of the structure. So with this extensive study, this is the analysis of the research, how the vernacular houses change over the period of the time. Now, when we have the change being traced out, we also need to understand and ask question of why did the change happen. So the answer the answer to the question that we ask, why did it change over the period of time, is the change in socioeconomic condition, the transition from an agrarian to more complex modern society, the people, the family size and all. So all correlates. So if we have these vernacular houses preserved and conserved, then our future generation can refer to how our ancestors lived in. So a very important aspect. So in the past, at the ancient period, from our research, we have that characteristic of full wall structure with significant inward inclination in the tapering and very less opening windows. And then the later transition, we have a full wall structure within the tapering element continues to remain, but then more niche windows are introduced within the structures. And then we have this full wall structure, and now the wooden element comes into play. The wooden frame windows comes into play. Then we now after that, the characteristic, we have the sleeve wall structure without tapering, minimal tapering, and then the large wooden frame window. So this is how the transition, chronological change of vernacular houses happened over the period of time characteristic. So from rammed out wall with thick and strong tapering, no or few windows, to now rammed out wall with light and less and wider and larger wooden openings. So this is the synthesis and analysis of the research, how the change has occurred over the period of time. So these are some of the examples of that of the period we see here. So in this flow of time, the first typology we have now, as far as our research is concerned, only one structure remaining, and then we have designated that as a national important structure, the first ever vernacular houses to be designated as a cultural heritage sites. Within this framework, after this extensive research, the department yeah, identified the three oldest typology of Ramrat houses. We have these three typology, and the first one is this house is in Tempo, and we have designated, and then we have assisted in restoration protection of this three typology. So the characteristics are very simple: one room structure. The lowest floor is used for animal livestock as a shade. The middle floor is used for storage, and topmost floor with minimal opening is used for living quarters. So when we did the research, we came across a historic sketch in 1783 in Bhutan. So when we correlate, and this there are similarity between these two, so we are able to determine that this structure, while there is no written record or history but particularly pertaining to this structure, but with this reference we are able to deduce that this structure is or older prior to 1783, when the sketch was being made. So from the 41 houses, the segregations that we have here, the percentage background. So we have this house with special background and all. So all this through this research, it kinds of guide us research-based decision, where we can how we do the protection, conservation, designation, registration. So I just want to highlight this with this slide. And then, of course, publication is also a very integral part of this, has been carried out, and then it is available. Then, with this success, we focus our research to eastern and central part, and then our initial understanding was towards the western part of Bhutan. The vernacular houses are predominantly rammed earth, and towards the eastern side is stone masonry. But when we really get into it and did our research on field research, we found that there are rammed earth houses in the eastern part. These are some of the photographs that I want to share with you all. The settlement, at the settlement level, the stone masonry structure. So the rammed earth, when I talk about, when I do referencing of rammed earth and stone masonry, the primary structural element is rammed earth, and then in the eastern part, the primary structural element of the vernacular house is stone masonry. So these are some of the example from the eastern part of the Bhutan. And then I would like to highlight here the specific. So this is from the highlands towards eastern part, so where the nomadic people lived. So through these vernacular houses, when we do documentation, interpretation, and all, we can understand the socio-cultural and socio-economic condition and context of that particular place. So very narrow the openings towards the in the western part, the example that I cited in early part of my presentation, the windows were towards the longer section of the house. Here it is the windows timber openings are the towards shorter section, and then the room height is comparatively lower than what we see in other vernacular houses. So through this interpretation, we can really connect to how people dwell, the climatic condition, the socio-economic condition that they thrive in or live in, all kind of influence to determine what vernacular houses can be seen or existed in that particular place. So apart from the architectural study, we also carried out structural study, and I think, with the support of the government of Japan, we had this science and technology research partnership for sustainable development, mostly focused from disaster point of view. So we kind of integrate this approach together with the overall vernacular house protection approach, whereby you can see here in output 2 we have seismic technology for constructing and strengthening the composite masonry building. In this research, we have scientific study. So architectural study is also focused on scientific documentation, but here we do structural analysis, one-to-one scale testing. So what did we do in structural study? We did smaller components testing. We did large scale, one-to-one scale testing, structural analysis. We gathered the data from these. So we did for traditional vernacular houses as built as per traditional techniques, how it during the time of horizontal loading, during the time of earthquake, and then with structural analysis, we introduce retrofitting measures, reinforcement within this, but not kind of undermining our traditional practice. So how it performs. So through this study, we carried out this research work, and also material testing, compressive and tensile strength testing, where we determined Young's modulus, tensile and compressive characteristic of the material, and also microtremor measurement, where we focus on the building time period and frequency. So more technical into the, so our structural team also carried in parallel to this aspect, and we had that pull down test equipment, load cell using pull down test also being carried out for life size structure. So with this, we have the manuals for construction. So in rural part of Bhutan, if they have to construct, these manuals, which are simplified, can be used. So they have the manuals for new construction, in traditional construction. If they want to do it traditional construction with rammed earth and stone masonry, they can do it. We also have manuals for how do they retrofit their existing vernacular houses. So these are all available. We did training of community training, and of the craftsmen, and also of the community leaders. Awareness advocacy has been carried out, and it's also available in the digital platform. So with these two aspects, now I'm coming to the last part of my presentation on the conservation of vernacular houses. I think I don't need to again reiterate what's mentioned out here, because I have been cross-linking to this statement in my earlier part of presentation. So vernacular house, through this study and our understanding now, are integral part of our heritage site in Bhutan. So as I've mentioned, we have already started to designate vernacular houses as heritage sites. They are indispensable, priceless heritage, dotting across the landscape, and the characteristic of our landscape, the identity of of the region, of the nation is being conveyed through these vernacular houses, along with the land use, agriculture field, and all together. So they are very important, and we need to sustain and preserve and conserve this priceless heritage. So we have carried out conservation works. So these are some of the examples of how conservation is being carried out. We're aligning to international approach of conservation, but not forgetting what has been done locally. So through craftsman engagement program, through custody and ownership owners engagement program, we are now trying to do conservation. So more like the research we carried out, and then this research oriented bottom-up approach we are trying to instill and integrate within the framework of conservation of cultural heritage in Bhutan. Not only on the research part, but the government also acknowledges the importance of vernacular houses, and we through some international donor agency and all, we have carried out some of the restoration work for the identified structures which have the potential to be designated or which are already designated. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation, and I would like to say that in most of the time, and in most of the cases, while we'll have to acknowledge that it is an integral part of cultural heritage, the monuments, the monumental structures, and all are being carried out from the are being conserved, are being protected, where there has the close linkage to the history of the country, the link to historic individuals, person, all the testimony of certain, this all values are being considered when we do the protection of cultural heritage. But sometimes we tend to forget this kind of cultural heritage, the heritage of the people, of our ancestor, which is being expressed, which we can understand, which we can pass down to our future generation, the heritage of the people, of the community, of our own ancestor. So I think through this we achieve many results. Primarily, number one, as I've already mentioned, that now they are the mainstream heritage in the country. So the vernacular houses are very important, and now the restoration and protection is being also considered. And thirdly, now the community, the people kind of acknowledge them, the vernacular houses as heritage. So not merrymaking and success story. There are a long way to go, but then nonetheless, it's a good beginning for us from Bhutan. So that's why I took this opportunity to share this story to all our friends in SAARC, and also to the global and other countries across the world. So thank you for giving me opportunity. So I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yeshi, for your insightful and inspiring lecture on the vernacular architecture of Bhutan. It is indeed very exhaustive research that you have presented. You have given a comprehensive understanding and shared your insights from your long research between Bhutan's Department of Culture and the Tokyo National Research Institute. It is evident from your lecture itself, the Bhutanese vernacular houses are more than just architectural structures. They embody the cultural heritage, identity, and lived experiences of the Bhutanese people. Now I invite our participants if they have any questions to ask.
Mr.
Yes.
Yeshi, I'm Dr. Yeshi Samdrup.
Yes. Good afternoon, doctor. Please go ahead with your question.
Uh, Actually, in Bhutanese architecture, I have observed that there is always one horizontal band of decoration, be it in the windows or in the roof. and it is always there. It is color. It is colorful, and I believe that without that band of decorative design, no Bhutanese architecture is being completed. So actually, interpretation of that decorative band, which is applied in every Bhutanese architecture, just below the tin roof or in the doors also, it is sometimes it is decorated in wooden format also, wooden format. Then what could be the interpretation, the meaning of the significance of that decorative band being applied in all the domestic architecture of Bhutan? That I wanted to know if some idea is there.
I'm not able to comprehend when you say decorative band. Is it the red color band that you
Yes, yes,
see
yes, yes, yes.
in the temples? In the temples, I think it is
Nowadays,
on.
if we go in this, suppose in Thimphu, there is a sports stadium, that gate also that is there. And suppose there is one police point I have observed, and police point also that decorative band is in Thimphu city. It is being that police point where for controlling traffic. So there also that is imitation is followed up.
Oh, basically, I think that's what you're talking about is kemar. Kemar, we call it kemar. These decorative band were used to symbolize the importance of the structure. So, if I'm getting correctly, the band which you mentioned, if it is kemar, then these have a hierarchy whereby certain structures can integrate that band. Not all structures can get that. So
Okay.
it kind of symbolizes the importance from the religious point of view. So, for example, that particular structures has to have statues. Of the past, present, and future Buddha with the scriptures, 108 volumes of the teachings of Buddha and all, or the person staying in that house or structure, particularly in temple, they get that decorative band.
Thank you. Thank you
Uh,
so much.
thank you, Dr. Datta, for your wonderful question.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments or any input?
Yes, thank you very much
Mr.
for sharing excellent research work. Actually, the house that you presented, like mostly they have used stone, earth, and also the wood as a material. So, I mean, is there any load calculation for that, or if it is one storage, they use a stone, or if it is two storage, multi storage, then use earthen thing and also wood. Is it like that, or it just all the vernacular house they are built of like stone and earth and this wooden thing?
Thank you, Mr. Sikdir. I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah, yeah, Shikdar.
So, the primary materials that are presented is predominantly towards the western part of Bhutan. We have rammed earth as an structural element wall, and then we have the wooden frame within, and then the openings used with wooden frame. In the eastern part, we have stone masonry. So usually they are random rubble masonry, RRM. I think in earlier vernacular houses, they don't have any calculation, but through the structural study, we have we came up with a code for structural design. So now, if they have to build a new one, and well, the guidelines, the brochure that we distributed is basically structurally we analyze that, and then we kind of see that this particular dimension is safe if we do it this way, so that the people who cannot afford to use the expertise can go ahead and build. So it is structurally sound, analyzed, scientifically studied. But now, if they want to build a massive structure or any other structure, and if they want to do the structure analysis, we have a code, design code. Is one of the product or the result of our scientific study on structural study.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Mr. Yeshi, I have a question. I was wondering
Oh, pleasure.
the wood that is used, right? So it is from a
Yes.
specific species of like trees that you use.
Okay. So it depends on the availability. So usually in vernacular houses, we found that in the central western region, the trees available to the proximity of the structures are mixed conifers. So they have used that mixed conifer species. And in towards the southern part, we can see hardwood. So based on the availability in the local environment and surrounding, they have used it. So usually predominantly mixed conifer is being used.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Okay, so in that case, Mr. Yeshi, thank you very much. In your presentation, kind of, it was very elaborate. And then, yes, the vernacular houses in Bhutan are a prominent feature of the nation's cultural landscape. And these structures, and they have also evolved over centuries, shaped by the environment, local, like things that, the kind of things that is available in the nature, as you have just mentioned, from the intricacies of the construction techniques to the symbolic meanings, as I think our agent Datta sir just asked about that, what is the meaning which is embedded in the design.
Yeah.
Your lecture has amply highlighted how these houses also reflect the social hierarchies, the communal living arrangements, and the adaptive strategies of Bhutan's diverse regions, which you have just mentioned. That it depends on the region, which region the local like natural resources available to them. So your talk not only highlighted the importance of preserving these houses, which is Bhutan's tangible cultural heritage, but also the intangible knowledge and the practices which has been like passed down through generations. Therefore, it is also very important to ensure for the future to understand and to value the heritage of the people, while fostering a deeper understanding of how vernacular architecture contributes to Bhutan's very unique cultural identity. Thank you, Mr. Yeshi. Once again, it was a great honor uh, to, to host you on the SAARC special lecture series. On behalf of SAARC Cultural Center, I also thank all the participants for joining online and taking a deep interest in the lecture. We have a series of upcoming SAARC special lecture. We have also in the month of October. And therefore, please follow the SAARC website and the SAARC Facebook for the updates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharina. Thank you.